Before we proceed, I'd like to briefly turn over the meeting to one of 4 outstanding students who will receive the President's Award tonight. Please welcome to the dais Carly Armendariz from Scottsdale Elementary School.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Carly Armendariz. I am Student Council President at Scottsdale Elementary School. It is my honor to put this meeting into order.
Nice job. I could have done it better than myself. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to Ysleta Independent School District's meeting of the Board of Trustees. The meeting of the Board of Trustees is a meeting of the board that the public is allowed to attend. As provided, Ysleta ISD Policy BED, we invite members of the public to make comments during the citizens' input portion at the start of the meeting according to the instructions provided with the electronic posting of our meeting. Legally, the board may listen but may not enter into discussion on matters in the citizens' input. We remind everyone that this is a board meeting often attended by students and ask that we conduct ourselves in a manner that best represents the values and traditions of the Ysleta Independent School District. This meeting of the Board of Trustees is called to order at 6:05 p.m. We have a quorum with Shane Haggerty, Chris Hernandez, Catherine Lucero, Connie Woodruff, Mike Dwyer, and myself, Cruz Ochoa. Trustee Charlie Bustillos is unable to join us, and he is considered excused. It has become a tradition to honor our nation at each of our board meetings by presenting the colors, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and then posting the colors. The colors tonight are presented by the Junior ROTC Color Guard from Riverside High School. The Color Guard commander is Cadet Lieutenant Colonel David Villanueva. The other Color Guard members are Cadet Private First Class David Osoria, Cadet Private First Class Diego Reyes, and Cadet Staff Sergeant Dominic Villanueva, And the pledge leader tonight is Cadet Second Lieutenant Alicia Garcia. Will you please stand for the presentation of colors, the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance, the Texas Pledge of Allegiance, and a moment of silence. Please remain standing until the cadets have departed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now please join me for the pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Order. Arm. Post. Colors. Ready. Set. Post. Present. Arm. Order. Arm. Color guard. Reform. Color guard. Halt. Censor. Face. Right. Face. Forward. March. Dr. De La Torre, do we have recognitions and introductions this evening?
Yes, good evening, President Ochoa, members of the board, esteemed guests. We do. I invite our Chief Human Capital Management Officer, Mrs. Bobby Russell Garcia, to lead in our recognitions and introductions this evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. De La Torre. We have 3 recognitions for you this evening. At this time, we ask all trustees to please come to the front of the dais for the presentation. Audience members, please remain seated until the recognitions are complete. Thank you. Our first recognition honors the Scottsdale Elementary School Student Council in its innovative partnership with local agencies to help serve those in need, in particular the Salvation Army, Cancer for Relay Drive, and the El Paso Women's Shelter. As part of their passion for providing service excellence, the Scottsdale Student Council collaborated with the Eastwood Learning Community to collect nearly 1,000 pairs of socks for the homeless community. They gathered more than $800 in community donations for organizations that support breast cancer patients in research. And they organized a blanket drive and donated more than 80 blankets for mothers at the women's shelter. These are just a few of the exceptional acts of kindness and commitment shown by the officers and sponsors of the Scottsdale Student Council. And we are proud to honor their contributions with the February 2024 President's Award. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome this month's President Award winners, the Scottsdale Elementary School Student Council. Here to represent the council is President Carly Armendariz, Vice President Iker Guidardo, Secretary Abigail Martinez, and Historian Gabriel Moreno. They are accompanied by Principal Juan Guzman. Let's hear it for the cadets. Our next recognition honors exceptional choir and band students from Del Valle, Eastwood, Hanks, and Parkland High Schools, who were selected for this year's All-State Choir and Band Ensembles, the highest honor a Texas music student can receive. These students were among 70,000 vocalists and musicians statewide who competed for spots on one of 15 all-state musical ensembles, performing alongside the state's best musicians at the Texas Music Educators Association Convention in San Antonio last week. Congratulations to these talented students. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me congratulate our all-state vocalists and musicians from Del Valle High School. Please welcome all-state orchestra percussionist Nathaniel Barraza. And mixed choir bass vocalist Alfredo Roman. They are accompanied by choir teacher Lisa Serna, band director Keith Morales, and principal Ivan Cedillo. Let's hear it for the Conquistadores. From Eastwood High School, please welcome All-State 6A concert band percussionist Aaron Avila. Tenor bass choir vocalist Orion Favela. And treble choir vocalist Marbella Leyva. They are accompanied by Eastwood choir teacher Dominique Velez, assistant band director Art Avila, and assistant principal Denica Martinez. Congratulations to the troopers. From Hanks High School, please welcome mixed choir tenor Jason Castillo. Tenor bass choir vocalist Francisco Lopez. And 5A concert band tenor trombone musician Judith Olivas. They are accompanied by choir teacher Orlando Guerrero, band director Horacio Gomez, and principal Ruben Cadena. Let's hear it again for the Knights. And from Parkland High School, please welcome all-state tenor bass choir vocalist Diego Jimenez. He is accompanied by choir teacher Unmi Garza and principal Javier Salgado. Let's hear it again for the Matadors. Our final recognition honors 7 Ysleta ISD students who were named to this year's All-State Dance Team by the Texas Dance Educators Association. All-state dancers participated in a convention experience in January that included dance workshops, leadership training, master classes, and networking with other students, culminating in a performance led by a master choreographer. Congratulations to these outstanding students. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our all-state dance team members, beginning with Bel Air High School student Nayeli Briones. She is accompanied by teacher Suzanne Salazar Paz and assistant principal Wes Mottinger. Congratulations to the Highlanders. From Del Valle High School, please welcome Ariana Humphreys. She is accompanied by teacher Gloria Tinajero Tovar and principal Ivan Cedillo. Let's hear it for the Conquistadores. From Eastwood High School, we have Sarah de la Garza, she is accompanied by teacher Amanda Magaña and Assistant Principal Danica Martinez. Congratulations to the troopers. Now, let's welcome Hanks High School dancer Danica Murphy. She is accompanied by teacher Crystal Nazario and Principal Ruben Cadena. Let's hear it for the Knights. From Parkland High School, please welcome Kayla de la Garza. She is accompanied by teacher Crystal Ortiz and Principal Javier Salgado. Congratulations to the Matadors. Next, from the Young Women's Leadership Academy, we have Nicole Loy. She is accompanied by teacher Christina Segovia and academic dean Laura Ponce. Let's hear it again for the Transformers. And our final outstanding dancer this evening comes from Ysleta High School. Please welcome Ariana Castro Munoz. She is accompanied by teacher Corina Valdez and Principal Amelia Garcia. Congratulations to the Indians. This concludes our recognitions for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Trustee Lucero, do we have citizens' input this evening?
No, we do not, President Ochoa.
Thank you. Dr. De La Torre, do we have any presentations this evening?
Yes, President Ochoa, members of the board, I'd like to introduce our comptroller, Mr. David Solis, who will begin with the 2024-25 budget development and timeline presentation.
Good evening, Board President Ochoa, members of the board, and Dr. De La Torre. This evening, we continue with our budget development discussion for the upcoming 24-25 fiscal year. This evening, we will share with you historical revenue information and also provide revenue projections for the upcoming fiscal year. As with any projection, we begin with identifying those assumptions that will be taken into consideration as we calculate or project revenue for the upcoming fiscal year. The assumptions that were considered included enrollment decline of 1,000 students, average daily attendance of 94.5%, no change to the basic allotment, no change to weighted funding for our special programs, no additional changes or additional revenue to the school safety allotment, and recent adjustments made by the state that have affected our school health and related services or SHARS revenue. This slide provides you with information about the SHARS adjustment. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General conducted an audit of the 2011 Random Moment Time Study methodology used in the School Health and Related Services or SHARS program, and it revealed that certain moments were coded in a way that did not align with federal and state policies. There were two parts to the audit. The first part was specific to 2 audited school districts. The second part included a recommendation to disallow those moments for reimbursement because they were deemed educational rather than medical in nature for all entities requesting SHARS reimbursement, and recommended that Texas refund the unallowable reimbursements for 2011. The Texas Health and Human Service Commission appealed the disallowance to the Health and Human Services Department Appeals Board, but the appeals were denied and the decision was upheld. HHSC has exhausted all appeals of the findings and now has recoded certain random moment time study moments and recalculated the statewide percentage. This recalculation resulted in a reduction of the federal fiscal year 2022 SHARS cost report revenue. Our district will see a reduction this year and ongoing reductions for the future federal fiscal years. As I shared with you last month, the district has been experiencing a decline in enrollment each year. However, as you can see from this chart, the revenue for the general operating fund has been trending on a flat bell-shaped curve, with the peak of the curve occurring in fiscal years 1920 and 2021. These were the years following the 86th legislative session in which school finance reform was approved. Part of that reform, among other changes, included increasing state funding of the basic allotment from $5,140 to $6,160, which provided millions in additional state funding for school districts. This is also the time of the pandemic. During this time, as districts experienced a further decline in student enrollment and struggled with student attendance, the state provided various levels of hold harmless funding to offset the fiscal impact of the pandemic that districts across the state were experiencing. As we look at the current year revenues, projected revenues are less than current budgeted revenues of $398.6 million by about $5.8 million. This is mainly the result of the SHARS adjustment that I discussed earlier in the presentation. Using the assumptions that we shared with you earlier, decline in enrollment of 1,000 students, no additional state funding, SHARS adjustment, and also knowing that ESSER funding will end this year, next fiscal year's revenue for the general operating fund is projected to be $379.5 million, or $19.1 million less than current year budgeted revenues. As we work through next year's budget, this is the gap that we are currently working to close. Unlike the general operating fund, in which the majority of revenue is derived from state sources, the Child Nutrition Fund is primarily funded through federal reimbursement of meals that are served and provided to our students. Currently, all students in our district are eligible to receive a free breakfast. With the exception of 5 campuses, the district operates under the community eligibility provision for our lunch program. Instead of collecting meal applications, the community eligibility provision allows districts to identify and certify students for free meals through direct certification, meaning if the student is already participating in another need-based program, i.e. SNAP or food stamps or TANF, the student is eligible to receive free school meals. Any public, private, or charter school that offers a national school lunch and school breakfast program, and where at least 40% of the students are identified through direct certification, can use the community eligibility provision. The provision allows the district to group schools to meet the eligibility percentage so that more students in the district are able to receive free meals. Through this grouping of schools, the district was able to add Alicia Chacon and Eastwood Knowles this year to the list of CEP eligible schools. For the upcoming year, the 40% requirement has reduced to 25%. Mr. Crawford and his team are working to make the remaining 5 campuses eligible to operate under the community eligibility provision through the grouping process. In doing so, we are hopeful that all students in our district would be able to receive a free lunch in addition to the breakfast that they are already eligible to receive. This slide provides the information for the community eligibility provision that I just shared and identifies the 5 high schools that are currently not eligible for CEP. So that would be Eastwood, Bel Air, Parkland, Hanks, and Del Valle. This slide provides a count of schools that are currently eligible for the community eligibility provision. We currently serve 43 campuses under this provision and are hopeful that we can make the remaining 5 campuses eligible next year and increase this number to 48. The final slide provides information for our debt service fund. We receive eligible debt service revenue from the state through existing debt allotment, or EDA, and the instructional facility allotment, or IFA payments. The majority of the revenue received for this fund comes from the local tax collections. The revenue generated from this fund is used to pay the district's annual debt service payments, both principal and interest, for the bonds that the district has issued. In the upcoming months, as we receive preliminary property values from the Central Appraisal District, we will evaluate our INS rate and be able to identify the potential to reduce the rate should the opportunity present itself. And with that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Regarding the Medicaid reduction, how, if any way, has that affected our students?
So it hasn't affected our students. It is just a reimbursement for the services, for the direct medical services that we were providing to them. So it's just a reimbursement of those services.
So we continue to do a high number of services without expecting reimbursement from the feds, is what you're saying?
In terms of the cost report, yes. So we do receive interim reimbursements for all students that are Medicaid eligible that have the parent consent on file. So we do receive those interim reimbursements. We just aren't expecting to receive any additional revenue from what they call the cost report settlement, which is about $6 million a year.
I just would like to highlight that we continue to serve students regardless of reimbursement. That's an important piece medically and social-emotionally with counseling services as well.
Thank you very much for this presentation today. I have a few questions and clarification. So we're losing approximately 1,000 students district-wide from the previous year,
That's what we were projecting.
and thus our revenue is less. What was the amount?
So from the state, overall, we are projecting 19.1 million less than our current budget.
Okay. And what changes are we making in expenditures this year from last year?
Sure. So as we are through the budget process, what we currently do is we do evaluate all the staffing and any vacancies, and we evaluate the need to fill those positions. I know through the academics program, we do evaluate all educational programs to strategically abandon those. Currently, we are also looking at all software across the district to also strategically abandon those that aren't efficient or effective.
Are we looking at reducing current staff?
So what we do is as vacancies, as people leave the district, either through retirement or just leave the district, we evaluate each position to see whether we are going to fill that position. I can tell you in my department, as I became comptroller, I did not fill the director of accounting, the director of accounting and payroll. So we have left that vacant. We also have left vacant several district level positions across the district as they become vacant, along with several associate level positions.
Do you think we'll be able to leave the number of teachers currently serving the district intact, thus reducing number of students per classroom in this year?
I'd like to answer that.
Yes.
So thank you. Mr. Hernandez, what we base that on is enrollment at the campus. And so because at the elementary campuses, it's 22-1, we make sure that we're adequately staffed. So in the event that we have resignations, then we wouldn't fill those positions if they weren't necessary. However, if a campus's enrollment goes significantly down, then we reevaluate the other campuses who are growing in enrollment, and we'll move those teachers based on seniority within the district. So although we may not fill positions, there's no teachers that will lose their job.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, that's what I was curious about, if there was going to be teachers that were going to be released because we have less students to serve.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
One of the things that I'd like to add is that when your enrollment is going down, even if you don't believe you're going to lose 1,000 students, it's best to be conservative and set a number that you can retreat from, because you can always add teachers. We never pull back on teachers who we've entered into a contract with. The only way to combat enrollment decline is to increase attendance. So an increase in attendance can offset the decline in enrollment. So an example would be, if you know you're going to lose 1,000 students, but you can get your attendance to go from 91% a day to 93 or 94% a day, that increase in enrollment can recover a lot of the revenue that you lost in enrollment. And that's why in the district we stress and we put a lot of emphasis on parents sending their children to school. The other thing is, in terms of positive attrition, we've been doing this for a decade. Every year we anticipate that positive attrition for teachers is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 120 vacant positions to 150 vacant positions. And what Bobby and her team have become very intuitive at doing is deciding when you fill a position or when you eliminate that position at a cost of about $70,000 per position. Where it becomes a little difficult is there are some positions that you cannot ignore. For example, special ed students have to receive the support and the services that they need. So if the vacancies in special ed, a hard to fill area, more than likely we will fill that position. If the position is in a hard science or mathematics, we may fill that position. And what we do basically is we accept that it's our responsibility to reconcile the ledger. If you're going to lose 1,000 students, it only hits you financially if you don't adjust your full-time equivalent to serve 1,000 students. If you leave it at 1,100, then you're losing a significant amount of money. But if you're able to every year, as she has, bring down the staffing to match nicely with the students, then declining enrollment doesn't have a detrimental impact, because all we've simply done is students go down, faculty goes down, support staff goes down, administration goes down. And so one of the things that I try to remind people is that when you're in declining enrollment, it's only adverse if you're not responsive to it, proactive to it, and bring down your faculty FTE, your administrative FTE to match the students. Another way of looking at it would be if I was at 28,000 students and next year we were going to have 32,000 students, then it works in the opposite. I'm hiring more teachers and the district is getting more revenue, but the revenue, if done correctly, always matches enrollment with full-time equivalent positions. And so the only unknown is you can't pick and choose where those vacancies come. So they're not always uniform, and that's where her magic comes in. And we make sure that on August 31st, we have the faculty we need to support the students. And so in our district, it will never affect program. And I fully expect that by August 31st, we will be very close to a balanced budget. Now, the following year, because cost of living adjustments and healthcare, they keep climbing, and the district has always made a commitment to insulate employees from increased healthcare premiums. That's the first thing we always do. We pay for the healthcare so that the employee doesn't feel it in the wallet. One of the big mistakes that I've seen done is folks come out, they ignore the healthcare, they put 4 or 5% on the salary schedule. Then the healthcare increases come in, and they're forced to go back and tell the employee that your healthcare increase exceeded the raise you got on your salary schedule. So you were celebrating in November, and then in January you realize you're giving it all back and then some. So you actually took a pay cut. So we have flipped that script. We take care of their healthcare benefits first, then we look at the possibility of a stipend, and then we go to the salary schedule so that we're always reconciling the ledger.
That makes sense. Thank you, Dr. De La Torre and Dr. Bobby Russell, for that explanation. You spoke about a community eligibility program, and there's 5 schools that are not eligible.
Correct.
I didn't understand what makes a school eligible or not.
So in order for the school to be eligible, they have to have at least 40% of their students identified as receiving a needs-based program, at least for direct certification. What this program allows us to do is take a campus that has a higher percentage and group it with a campus that has a lower percentage, so that way the combined percentage is around that 40%. When it comes to the high schools, because of the number of students they have, grouping them, providing that grouping is a little bit challenging to get to that 40%. So that's why, for that reason, that's why those 5 high schools we haven't been able to successfully put them in a group where we can get them down to 40%.
You said it's the goal, though, for the following school year to have them all eligible?
Correct, and the reason for that is because next year the percentage goes down from 40% to 25%.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little bit more realistic for us to try to make those groupings happen. So right now, like as I mentioned, Mr. Crawford and his team are working on doing the calculation to see how we can fit them into those groupings to meet that threshold.
And is it based on the number of students who qualify for the federal free and or reduced lunch program?
So it's based upon needs-based, if they're already receiving like a needs-based program like TANF or food stamps, like those students.
All of those, okay. So on affluency.
Pretty much.
Well, again, thank you for this presentation. I believe we have a couple more presentations coming, at least right before we take the vote. And I'm hoping in those presentations, we can have an easy way to see what changes are being made in expenditures, knowing that we have $19 million less. I'm also curious about what each learning community is, how it's being fit into the budget, and if there'll be an easy way to see that comparison.
We'll work on that.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Solis, thank you for your presentation. The topic is commercial development in the Ysleta district. Would we, and I'll open this up to either you, Mr. Solis, or you, Mrs. Leeper. I know across the street from Eastwood, there's a commercial development going in as I speak. Would you be able to give us an update on if there's any other commercial developments going in, and if there will be when there might be tax flow headed towards our district?
So generally, we don't receive any appraised values to include new commercial property until April. That will be the first opportunity we get to see what new development we have and what the values have been assessed at. So probably in the next month, no, in April, we get it April 25th, you won't see it from us until May. We won't have an idea of what new commercial development has taken place and what those values are.
Okay, thank you.
But we will show you for sure. You'll see them when we come, both with the certified values and with the tax rate. We talk about it at both those times.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, on that projection of losing 1,000 students or having less, a reduction of 1,000 students, that's roughly about 20 students if we just took it on an average per school that we have, right? We have about 49 schools, so that's 20 students. But I know that's not real. Is there some way we can get the numbers or, per school as where the drops are? I mean, it might not say anything because of economic changes to the families or students graduate or whatever. But it would be interesting to see if there are certain particular areas or schools that are having these kind of reductions in student population. And that would present some kind of a trend from the last 3 or 4 years. As, okay, that for me would then give us the opportunity to focus on, okay, these schools are losing students. Why? It could be because of charter schools, it could be or whatever it is. The reason we need to probably look at that and do some examination of what we could do to get that student population back up. If it is like that, if it's across the board, that's hard. But if it's certain areas, certain schools, I think we should do kind of a study and see what we could do to bring up that enrollment at those schools. So if you could present that.
Let me present it for you. Parkland has lost some enrollment, not very significant. Eastwood has lost no enrollment. Hanks, very little enrollment. Bel Air, very little enrollment. Riverside has lost excessive enrollment. Ysleta has lost excessive enrollment. And Del Valle, because of the transfers from Socorro ISD, has maintained their enrollment, relatively speaking.
Oh, good. But I would still like to see the numbers, just to have some kind of data that supports what we're experiencing.
It's great to see the numbers, and the numbers are important for you to be able to understand and get us where we need to be to focus on increasing enrollment. But the reality, it's not just the enrollment in each of these areas. These areas are landlocked. These areas have aging population. And so it's more about what can we do about increasing, and that's why we've discussed about in other board meetings about what we can do to partner with the city in order to be able to put first-time homebuyer programs in place that'll make things more attractive in the Ysleta community, in the Riverside community, to bring young families in, because unless we start partnering with the powers that be that have, which is real estate, we're going to continue to see this regardless of what we do to combat that. Our programs are awesome. We're #1 in the city. We know this. We have an A report card, but we need to be able to partner with those that are going to help us to increase that and make homeownership an attractive thing in Ysleta del Valle and in the Riverside communities.
Trustee Lucero, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for saying that. I couldn't agree more. That's exactly my vision of what we need to do. We may be landlocked and that we can't geographically expand, but the reality is I know there's parents, I can speak for my district, that have made the decision not to send their students to our schools, and that's very disappointing. So I agree with President Ochoa that perhaps with some data and numbers and the sort of things that you're talking about, we might be able to we're looking at excessive loss. So It was very concerning, and I would thank you for bringing that up, President Ochoa, because I would also like to see those numbers.
Yeah, an in-depth analysis of just what's happening. I know it's happening in all of our districts here in El Paso, but for Ysleta, we just have to be a little bit more, what am I say? We just got to do our homework and find out exactly what is going on in all of these areas, especially like Dr. Lactora said, Eastwood is fine, Hanks is fine, but we also got to concentrate on the other schools that have declining enrollment. And it could be like Ms. Luceto said, that could be a lot of reasons, but we could speculate here all night. I would rather have something more concrete presented to the board and say, look, this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this. And then we can have a better understanding across the board of what's happening in our district. And if we have some way to make those changes to improve our enrollment, it might not happen in 1 year, it might happen in 2 years, but I'm projecting by that 3 or 4 or 5 years, we could make those changes that would stabilize our enrollment at the schools, that would keep us from having this problem in the years to come. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have one thing just really quick to say, because the conversation that you guys are having right now reminds me of way back in the day before we did our first bond, the Jacobson report. Am I getting that correct? And quite honestly, that report was okay. It showed us where we were going, but they also projected something totally different than what has actually happened. So I think we need to be really careful when we start talking about this stuff. I think it's good to talk about it, I'm not saying that, but we need to be very careful because data and numbers and projections and stuff like that are not always the answer. And that's what I feel like that's kind of what we saw when we did that Jacobson report.
Yeah, the one thing that the people from Jacobson could have never anticipated was the pandemic. And so they had this district leveling out at, I believe, 38,000 students, somewhere in that neighborhood after 10 years. What El Paso is going through, what El Paso is experiencing is the exact same thing that you see in Seattle, Oakland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, every single urban area in America. And that is in some way driven by different values and belief systems where families are no longer having 4, 5, 6 children. On average, I believe the number now is just under 2 children. And the cohort of children, the birth rate coming into our schools is significantly lower today than it was 10 years ago, and very much lower than it was when we grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So all of that information we're going to collect on behalf of the board. We're going to provide it to the board. I don't think any of us would be happier than to sit with the board and come up with ideas to try and get more students back in the district, but there is absolutely no way that the Ysleta Independent School District will be a school district of 56,000 students again.
And again, that's reality. If it's across the board, across the nation, across Texas, but I'm focused on what's happening in Ysleta. And I'm not willing to just assume that that is why things are happening. I'm more of what is something that we can remedy. Maybe like Dr. Latoro says, the birth rate is low. Then we can say this is what's happening in these neighborhoods. But not until I see that will I have a good comprehension of what is happening, because this is not only going to impact our budget today, it's going to impact our budget next year and the next year after that, unless the legislature actually loosens up their purse and provides that funding that we desperately need. But even so, the enrollment is still going to play a big factor in our revenue. So I just want to have some kind of some kind of an idea what are the causes of declining enrollment and where is it happening more than, and that's, I like numbers. I like to see that. So, okay.
President Ochoa, so if we're going to look at the data and look at the numbers, then let's think about a discussion to put something in place to increase our enrollment. If that's what we're going to do, let's really look at it, dissect it, and have something in place that we will act on as board members to help that.
Well, yeah, that's the whole basis for this conversation is that we have declining enrollment. What are the reasons? What are the fixes, if there are any? That we can,
I just want to say, let's not be afraid to fail. Let's at least, if we're going to fail, at least we did so trying. I don't want to, just echo the sentiment. I just don't want, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I think that's the worst attitude to have of all. So I appreciate these efforts and discussions, and I look forward to what we can come up with. I like that we're challenging ourselves. So thank you, President Ochoa.
Okay, thank you so much.
Our next presentation, President Ochoa, is the legally required 2022-23 TAPER report, otherwise known as the Texas Academic Performance Report, by Dr. Brenda Chacon.
Good evening, President Ochoa, members of the board, Dr. De La Torre. Tonight, we are here to present our Texas Academic Performance Report. Dr. Medellin and Mr. Hernandez from area will present it. I want to remind you that the data that you have in front of you is the numbers, but we're still under legislation, the lawsuit that TA has, so that we were not rated this year. This is simply the data that was released recently by TA with no ratings for your schools. So without further ado, I'm going to have Dr. Medellin come up.
Thank you. Good evening. As we are required to do by law, we would like to provide you with the annual report for the Texas Academic Performance Report. This report is required by a different set of laws, both in the Texas Education Code, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and the Safe and Drug-Free Schools Communities Act. So it's both a federal and state set of laws that require us to provide you this information every year. And one of the things here that is a little bit strange is that this kind of data is pretty old at this point. I mean, we're in February. This is all data from the 2022-2023 school year. And in many of those instances, the data is from even the previous school year. So the information that we hear, that you're going to hear right now, does pertain to this current year, but it provides you with the quote-unquote official information from the state. It's the final say from what happened last year and how we measure across the state. So the performance report requires certain contents to be available to anyone online. And part of those is the academic performance of the district, the accreditation status, financial standard reports, a report that includes the violent and criminal incidents, the school violence prevention and violence intervention policies, and then a result from evaluations of the Safe and Drug-Free Act, together with the performance of the class of 2021 students in higher education, and a list of the campus goals and objectives from that year. So all of that information has to be provided to the public and be available on demand. For the academic performance for the 2023 school year, we would like to give you just a quick overview on the 3 different levels of performance that we measure across the state. For the percent of students that are rated approaches or grade level or better, you will notice that the district was at the same level or better across every subject with the state and Region 19. In fact, we outperformed both the state and Region 19 in reading, math, and science, and we were on par with social studies for the region and higher than the state as a whole. Now, one of the things that we'd like to provide you here is a little bit of context of what has happened in the past few years. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a severe drop in performance. And so what you see here is the history of performance divided by the year of 2019, which was the last year before the loss in learning happened. And what you can see on this particular slide is that we as a district have now in reading improved. We have gone beyond, we have closed the gap that the pandemic created, and we have gone 2 points beyond that compared to 2019. So our reading performance in approaches grade level is now rising again, having closed that gap that was created during 2020. The other subjects have not quite closed the gap yet, but that gap keeps getting smaller and smaller every year as we go along. We can also see a comparison of the rate of approaches grade level across the large school districts in our region. And we see that our district has outperformed other large districts in mathematics, in most of the grade levels, in some grades in reading, and in most subjects in the EOC. If we look at our special education students, you can see that we have helped our special ed students outperform their peers on every subject, pretty much every grade level across the district compared to the city's other large districts and the state. For our emerging bilingual students, we are outperforming as well in mathematics and on our high school assessments. And so that is at the level of approaches grade level. Now, when we look at a little bit of a higher rigor on assessments on the meets grade level and STAR, we can see that we are still performing at or above the performance level at both the region and the state for every subject. In this, we can see again where we are going on the gaps that are being closed on each of the subjects. Reading has closed that gap again and is now increasing, continuing the pace that we had before. The other three subjects are still a little bit behind, but they're closing again. Those gaps are smaller and smaller as the years go by. When we compare our students at the meets grade level standard with the other districts and the state, we can still see that we are outperforming the other districts in mathematics and in the majority of the EOC subjects as well. Looks like my computer didn't want to show you the rest, but let me go back here just a minute, please. There we go. Our special education students at the master's grade level, again, outperform all the other districts in every subject, most grades, both elementary, middle, and high school. Our emerging bilinguals outperform students across the city in mathematics and science and in high school subjects. And for the final one, the master's grade level rating, which is when the highest rigor portion of the assessment measurement, we are right below the state, right around, we're fairly level, but a little bit below the state average on the subjects. We haven't quite reached there. We have been getting closer. We have been closing those gaps as the years go by. We started far lower than that, and now we're catching up to them as we go. For the gap that was created in 2020, reading again has closed the gap at the master's grade level. The other subjects still have a gap, but they're again smaller than they were the previous year. And if we're comparing across the region, we can see that we outperform in mathematics and in high school, and then some grade levels in reading in science as well. Our special education students, we continue to be the top performance across the city on every subject, every grade level. And our emerging bilinguals, again, in mathematics and science, and in high school, we outperform other districts and the state. The second measure that we have in performance is growth. How students are improving from year to year based on where they were before. Annual growth is how many students are improving their rating from the previous year to the next. Or if they are at grade level or at master's, if they have remained at that level from the previous year. And on that one, we outperform the state and the region on both reading and mathematics, which are the only two subjects that have data on growth. Accelerated learning on the right-hand side of the screen is a different measure. This one measures the percent of students who had failed the STAR or EOC the previous year and passed it the following year. And on that one, you can see that our district is doing far better than both the state and the region in helping those students that have previously failed pass. One of the things that happens here is that the best predictor of a student failing STAR is if they had failed STAR the year before. And what our teachers and administrators are doing here is they're changing that trend and making sure that students that had failed the assessment before get the help they need so that they can be successful the following year. For graduation rates, the state has 3 different measures of graduation. And the way that the state looks at this, it's not looking only at seniors at the graduation year, but it's looking at students that started high schools 4 years before, and then they ask, where are these students now? And that's your 4-year graduation rate. Then they look at students who started high school 5 years ago, and then they ask, where are they now? And that's your 5-year graduation rate. Then they look at students who started high school 6 years ago, and they ask, where are they now? And they could have started high school anywhere, not just in our district or in Texas, but anywhere in the world. The question there becomes, have they continued, have they finished high school in 4 years, in 5 years, or 6 years? So our 4-year graduation rate is higher than the region, but a little bit lower than the state. That was in 2021. In the class of 2022, we are still a little bit higher than our region, but the state is still beating us on that rate. On the 5-year graduation rate, we are higher than both the state and the region, and you will notice that both the region and numbers went down from the class of 2021 to the class of 2022. We're still trying to get students to catch up and finish those courses that they need for graduating. The 6-year graduation rate, we outperform both the state and the region on our rates, and we have more than 9 out of our 10 students that start school with in high school, we get them to finish in 4, 5, or 6 years. Now, for the dropout rates, what we want is we want a lower rate. The lower the dropout rate, the better we are doing with our students. And you will notice that we have a lower dropout rate on the 4-year dropout rate than the Region 19, and still a little higher than the state. For our 5-year dropout rate, we are lower than both the region and the state. So we're capturing more students. We're helping them not give up if they haven't graduated in 4 years. We're helping them to continue to keep coming to our schools. 6-year dropout rate, again, is significantly lower, but than both the region and the state. And so even if our students are not finishing in 4 years, we are encouraging them to continue, keep trying, we keep helping them, and they keep being successful, depending on how long it takes, no matter how long it takes. The next measure is college readiness. And college career and military readiness graduates, this one is a little bit different. It's whoever graduated in the class of 2022, then the state asks, are they college ready, are they career ready, or are they military ready? And our district has 86.7% of our graduates being CCMR, and that far exceeds the percent of students that are graduating ready in both the region and the state. On the right-hand side, you can see we break down the data a little bit so that we can see where the students are ready. 68% of our students were college ready, and 50% of our students were career ready. Now, if you add those numbers, you will see that this is more than 100%, right? And we have 86% of our students at CCMR, so that means that some students that are finishing in our district are finishing as both college and career ready. So we're providing them as many opportunities as we can in as many ways as we can so that they can be successful whenever they graduate from us. The next set of reports have to do with the PIMS financial standard reports, and this one is just required for your presentation. The only piece that we would like to show you here is the difference in revenues from the state to our district. So the state relies on about 40% of local tax, 36% of state tax, 21% of federal taxes to fund the districts. We relied mostly on state with 57%, 27% federal, or only 15% on local taxes. So the sources of revenue are very different in our district than in the rest of the state. On expenditures by function, there is a lot of numbers here, but the main piece that I would like to highlight for you is that the state spends 56% of their expenditures are for instruction, and the district spends 58%. So we are spending more of our money in instruction than the state is. Everything else is pretty close across the board, but we do put a little bit more money in instruction. We're also required to provide you with a list of violent and criminal incidents. These are the types of incidents that require, there's a list created for us, and these are mostly incidents that generate felonies or those kinds of situations. And you will notice here that we have, for the most part, very few violent and criminal incidents in our schools. The one with the highest one is the possession or use of controlled substances. Everything else is very, very low in our district. And we have about 2% of enrollment with incidents in the year. Now, when we compare from 2022 to 2023, we have seen some increases in certain areas, mostly on the possession and being under the influence of a controlled substance. Vaping here has a lot to do with that increase. Now, the other piece about that we would like to provide you with is how many students of ours enroll in higher education after they leave our schools. And here, we can see that the class of 2022 has shown a significant increase in the number of students that have enrolled in higher education immediately after graduating our high schools. And the increase is across the board for every campus. And this has to do a lot in part because we had seen a drop due to the issues with the pandemic. Students did not, higher education saw a drop in enrollment because of that, and it seems like that is bouncing up, and our students, because they're college ready, then they are more confident and they are enrolling in greater numbers in our institutions of higher education. And all of these reports, together with the full set of data that is in the state reports, are available on our website under the state accountability, federal and state accountability section of our sites. And so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
I have one question. Back on your report for the criminal activities, if you go back, you notice that, well, on the next slide after that, there's the 2 asterisks, and then there's zeros in some places. I guess I just assumed the 2 asterisks meant 0. So why do you have 0 and then you have the 2 asterisks? What's the difference?
Yes, federal law requires us to mask any number below 5 to avoid the possibility of somebody identifying students. And so anything between 1 and 5 has 2 asterisks. And we provide the 0 so that we know if there is a change. So for example, non-Title V felony committed off campus, we didn't have any in 2022, but we had some in 23. So that gives you an idea that there were some, there were fewer than 5, but they weren't 0. So that way you can see that there's a change. And otherwise, if it's 0 and 0 on a particular one, we just don't put it in at all because they didn't happen over 2 years.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're You're welcome.
Yes. I believe Dr. Chacon knows where on what question I'm going to ask. And I realize that when students go from elementary school to the middle school, it's a big jump. And for some reason, strange things can happen during their 7th grade year. I noticed the 7th grade scores, and do you want to take over, Dr. Chacon?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Actually, I'm happy to report, and Ms. Woodruff will remember this, at this time last year, we had the same conversation regarding our middle schools. And we've actually improved, for example, in 7th grade math, we went from 48% the previous year. We increased by 8 percentage points to 56%. We also increased in our social studies, that the previous year was at 58%. We've increased by 4% in social studies. Our 6th grade, 7th grade all remain the same and have increased. The transition is one thing. If you recall, last year was our first year of us bringing 6th grade to align the district, the rest of the district, the schools that had 6th grade separate. This was our first year. So we are seeing increases in middle schools across the board, and we'll continue working to increase their performance.
Thank you.
I have two questions. The first one was on the pie chart that shows the expenditures. I think it was the second biggest one for 2020 for 22%. What is that? What is the 22% being spent on?
22% is broken down on the rectangle to the right. So it's everything that you see, the 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, all of those are part of the 22%.
Okay, I got you. I'll take a closer look at that later. My other question was, my understanding, if I heard you right, was that science is the only subject that were performing below state performance? Is that right?
Let me go back to make sure that.
I think
At the master's grade level?
Yeah, could you speak a little bit more to that, just so I understand what's...
Historically, the master's grade level has been harder to achieve in our type of school because other schools in other parts of Texas had lower economically disadvantaged areas. And so students with fewer campuses with fewer economically disadvantaged students tend to perform better than campuses with high economically disadvantaged students. And so when we started these measures, we were much further below the state, and we have been catching up to them. They haven't been moving up very much on these measures, and we have been slowly getting our students to the rigor that they need to get to the master's grade level.
Okay, so my understanding was wrong then, that science is not the subject that we might be most concerned with?
Science has been growing as well. Every subject has been improving, so there isn't something specific in science that would be of concern.
Okay. And when I heard that, I remember that the PRISMS VR was introduced to the district this year. It's brand new, but it did raise the question. Maybe Dr. Chacon, you can answer. I know it's very early, but do you anticipate seeing, are we able to make a correlation on the improvement of having this type of technology and curriculum?
Yes, Mr. Hernandez. Actually, so the PRISMS is used in biology for high schools, right? We did not use it in the middle schools for sciences. It's used for your high school sciences. So biology was a main grade level along with algebra and seventh grade math. So based on our interim data, which they just took, it does look like we are performing higher than the previous year at this time. But of course, we'll find out at the very end here in the near future.
That's great. That's fantastic. I was very optimistic that that would be the case. That's what I thought, seeing that technology. I thought it was fantastic, and I did think it would have that effect. So. And
if I can add, today, actually, Dr. Altodo and I received some student evidence of students writing about their PRISMs and how they are able to grasp those concepts a lot better. So that was just happened today, so it's funny that you mentioned it, but students are giving us their feedback that they're able to understand those concepts.
Back to the approaches, please. Yes, these signs. So here's something that, that I'm going to share with you. In our district, we have always, Dr. Chacon, her team, we have always focused more on meets expectations and masters expectations rather than approaches expectations. What I notice when other districts, neighboring districts and districts around the state report their success, they don't necessarily report meets or masters. They stay with the approaches because the approaches is pretty impressive. If you can tell the world that in the Ysleta Independent School District, 80%, 8 and 10% of all students are passing the reading test, it sounds a lot better than 5 out of 10 are passing the reading test or 3 out of 10 are passing the reading test at the master's level. But you have to understand the definition of approaches. Approaches simply means that they're making progress, that there's a potential for growth, and that somewhere in the near future, they're going to meet the grade level standard. These people haven't met, not all of them, haven't met the grade level standard, but in the state of Texas, this is seen as success. When you meet the grade level, that number, that 80, probably drops to 50, right? 53. That means that 53 of them have actually met the grade level standard. They are performing at grade level. What the master's means, and that's down closer to 20%, I assume, is that you can look a parent in the eyeballs and tell them, your student is graduating with a diploma, and based on their performance, they are more likely than not to be admitted to college and complete a college degree. And that's why when you look at masters and you look at the completion rate at UTEP, which is right at 24%, that means we send a ton of kids to UTEP knowing that 1 in 4 will actually get a diploma with a baccalaureate degree. So because we're about college career readiness and we're about preparing kids for their future, not for the excitement that high school brings, we tend to put a lot of emphasis on meets and masters when we could simply save you time in not reading the meets and the masters and say, as far as the state of Texas is concerned, 80% of students are succeeding. But that bar is so low. So we kind of focus on meet and masters. And so while if you go back, check this out, super proud, highest performing district in the area in reading, math, science, and tied at the social studies, outperforming the state, outperforming the region, tied with the region. Go to the next one. No, go to the first with the green. Not that one. The subgroups. This is all students. Outperforming, you went to SPED. All students. We outperform the region. There's your Socorro scores, your El Paso scores, and typically that's who we compete against. Once in a while, Canutillo sneaks in there. If you look at EOC, 74, 77, 92, 92, 96. If we just left it at that, and it got into the media, super, super impressive. And by the way, it's impressive, and Dr. Chacon's team does a great job, but we are myopic, and that's why I think sometimes our principals and our leadership teams get a little resistance from faculty and staff, because what we're trying to do is very difficult. Go to the next group. You want to talk difficult? Those are special education students. Nobody in this city, nobody in this state does what my teachers do for special ed students. In all but 2 categories, absolutely. In all but 2 categories, 8th grade math, my eyes are leaving, 8th grade social studies. The only 2 categories in the entire repertoire of tests, the special ed student in the Ysleta Independent School District is the highest performing in this region. And the reason that we have 15% special ed students is because the special ed community is very close-knit. They know where to go. And when they find a school district that meets the needs of their kids, they come from everywhere. So as Socorro's over there working with 9% special ed, and El Paso's working with 11% special ed, we're working with 15% special ed. And even with 15%, you can see right there, every content area, every grade level area. Your next subpopulation is your emerging bilingual students. That's those students who did not speak English as a primary language in their home. And again, you're seeing where at the high school level, by the time they get to the high school level, in Dr. Chacon's dual language program and ESL program and emerging bilingual program, higher percentages of our emerging bilingual students have become proficient in English. And if you look closely, here's something people don't see. They're performing at the same rate as all students were at the beginning, which means that those scores that the all students generated in that first slide are mainly driven by special ed students and emerging bilingual students having a good experience in our school district. So, but again, and we appreciate it, we celebrate the approaches, but we are focused on getting kids to be grade level proficient, meeting the standard, which means that they have a higher likelihood of having a good experience in a college, university, or post-secondary opportunity if they get there. I'm glad YTA is here. Otherwise it'd be crickets.
Well, thank you, Dr. De La Torre, for that explanation. I really appreciate the explanation on the masters, the meets, and the approaches, and the difference between there. Thank you, Dr. Chacon, for your explanation as well. And I continue to look forward to the prisms, and I especially right now want to thank all the teachers of the district. It's the teachers that are on the front line, and it's the teachers that are the main reason why we're seeing our students succeed like this better than the rest of the state and the district. So, thank you to everybody, and thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for leading me to the next question. No, thank you, Mr. Medellin. It's good to see you again. I hadn't seen you up here in a long time, but it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
I'm very encouraged by all this presentation, all the numbers, and that we're always up number one there on all areas. But I have a question for Ms. Lily Leeper, Brenda, and Bobby. You three play a big role in what's happening in our schools. One is our environment, what our bonds have been able to produce as far as what our children classrooms look like, our schools, and everything else. Ms. Chacon, it's our programs, our academic programs that I've been able to see a sample of them. I've only visited 3 areas, but I've really impressed with what's happening with our programs. And Ms. Russell, it's the caliber of teachers that we have in place in our classrooms. I think all 3 of those combinations, the environment, the academics, and the teachers have really been the workhorses that have made us successful as far as our district. So, do you have any comments on that, Ms. Leeper?
The environment is due to the leadership that we serve under, Dr. De La Torre and this board. You enabled us, you took those bond programs out to the community. Without your support, without the community support, we wouldn't be able to provide those environments.
Well, I've seen the environment. Every school is refrigerated air, and the environment is great. I've seen the classrooms. They're all equipped with the latest technology or the best that we can provide at that point. I mean, I've seen things that I think the board should go out there and see for themselves what is really happening. I went through that pre-K. I was so impressed with the technology that they were working with ease and doing math problems, which are like, wow, pre-K. And you, Ms. Chacon?
Well, I'd like to echo what Dr. Torres said. I think it's I'm part of your leadership and along with his leadership of setting that bar, setting those targets for us. We just went through evaluation process, so we see they're high targets, but the group of principals that we have, the group of teachers, staff, everybody in this district there's nothing they can't accomplish. And I really believe that. There's a belief system that all students can learn. And what's good for one is good for all.
Yes.
And that, with that belief system of success and believing that all students can learn is one piece of the magic, but that's
think
probably
so.
the most important piece.
I think that's been one of our goals as far as the board is to provide the same opportunities, the same level of education that every student, no matter what school they go to. And I think that's been the big reason that we have been so successful. And Ms. Russell, our teachers.
So I think it's a team effort, and when I say a team effort, it's everyone. It's the board, it's our superintendent, it's our association, it's our teachers being willing to go above and beyond for our kiddos. Oftentimes you hear where teachers don't want to go that extra mile, but our teachers are going that extra mile, and they're taking it down to the science to provide interventions to make sure that our students are successful. And so like Dr. Chacon said, every student can learn. It's just us learning how to teach them in their best style.
And that's been one of the, I think that's been a great eye-opener for me in visiting all the schools that I have so far. I still have some more to do, visit, but the same caliber of teacher, the same rigor in the classroom, the same enthusiasm that is shown from pre-K all the way to high school. You know, it doesn't matter what classroom I walk into, I feel the same energy, the same level of commitment that goes across the board, no matter what school I go to. And I think, again, yeah, it is the leadership, it is everything else, but I think it's the culture, and I think we should all celebrate and congratulate ourselves because we did provide the environment, the buildings that two bonds that we were able to upgrade or provide new schools for our students. The programs and the teachers that have come forth and executed those programs to the level, just like Prisms. I mean, that's a new, and now I hear that it's very promising. And our teachers, we've been able to keep most of our teachers. We, the board, last year voted on a budget that increased the pay for first-year teachers to $60,000, which I think is still pretty good for our teachers that are coming into this area. But I just want to say that it takes more than one. You got to look at it, everything, and it takes a team, and I think that's what I was trying to say. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. I'm sorry I kept you up there all this long, but thank you for your presentation, and hope to see you again soon.
Likewise.
Thank you, Dr. Medellin.
Thank you.
And finally, if the board is ready, Ms. Amy Sanchez with an internal audit 2023 annual report.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. De La Torre. I'm happy to present our activities for 2023, just in a brief summary here, as well as to present our proposed 2024 audit plan. I will also present a follow-up status. It's been noted before, it's important to follow up with the campuses and the departments that are audited to make sure their corrective action plans are implemented. So I'll also share that status as well.
Well, that was fast.
I don't know.
Any questions?
There's a ghost in here. I think someone else's. Apologies, just a moment, please. All right. As for our 2023 audit plan, it covers the calendar year. This past year, we were able to complete 26 campus audits, 2 that were carryover projects from the previous year, 2 non-campus audits, and currently we have 3 non-campus and 3 campus audits in progress. Anything that's in progress right now will be included in our carryover line item for 2024. And so how does that line up with what we initially intended? Here is an overview of the 2023 audit plan at the summary level. You can see that we did spend more hours on campus audits than we had intended to and less on the non-campus risk-based. I think a lot of our time this year was kind of aligning our processes on the campus side so that it can operate a little more streamlined in the coming year. We did make some changes in our processes, including meeting with principals at the beginning and ending of those campus audits so that they fully understand the recommendations and we go through the corrective action plans. The carryovers, you'll see that generally the difference is in the campus audits. Now, on a more detailed level, apologies, it's a little small. I think in your board book, it might have it, it has it on a larger font. Again, the campus audits, you can see we intended to do 15 elementary, 5 middle, 4 high schools, and 4 others. We were very close. We ended up with 13 elementaries, 5 middles, 3 high schools, although 2 will be completed this month. We've already done the reports, just need to receive the corrective action plans. And we did 3 of the other audits. Unfortunately, we were unable to do the non-campus audits. Several of these are transferred to the 2024 plan because during our risk assessment process, these do continue to rise up as higher level risk than some of the other areas. This is the status of the corrective action plans. Once we complete the audit, we receive a corrective action plan from the schools and the departments, and either later that semester or the next semester, we try to come in and make sure that the corrective action plan is implemented. That is required by our professional standards, and it has been helpful for the campuses. I have it separated by high school, middle school, elementaries, at least for this part. You can see in the green, we did the follow-up and found no additional errors and that the corrective action plan was fully implemented. The yellow, we did a follow-up in progress. If it's white, that means it's not due until this current semester. Middle schools, there were a few that we've included as continuing monitoring because we did find additional errors and would like to provide additional guidance for the campuses. Again, this is just for the campuses and the elementary school. Anything that's blank on here, we didn't audit in the current or previous calendar years, but they are scheduled for 2024. And these are the other non-traditional schools. Other activities, as you are aware, we do have a fraud, abuse, and waste hotline. For the 23 calendar year, we received 16 calls or reports. Most of the calls that we get are not audit related. If it's HR related, we pass those on to human resources because we don't audit personnel issues. That's not our area. Some other areas, 4 were also not audit related, and we gave those to the appropriate departments. If it has to do with students, we pass it to student services. If it has to do with IT or an information security item, we've passed it along there. And 3 we reviewed, and only one of those 3 resulted in an audit report. Let's see. pardon me. So for the upcoming 2024 year, we went through our process of doing the risk assessment. We met with the chiefs, we met with associate superintendents, we issued a survey to director level, some coordinators, and got their feedback. And as a result, this is just the summarized version of our 24 audit plan. We have, at least for now, we have equal hours attributed to campus and non-campus. The carryovers, that should say 2023, not 22, and follow-up reviews, as well as some hours set aside for hotline and any special requests. And the detailed plan is listed here. The campus audits, we do aim to do similar numbers as last year. Non-campus, there's the list there that we hope to get to again this year, and a few carryovers that we will continue in 2024 and finalize.
Amy, on the audit plan for this year, you have ESSER funds, funding. When will that end?
Excuse me?
When will the auditing of these ESSER funding end?
It would be this year.
This will be the last year for it? This will be the last year for?
Of funding or auditing?
No,
or
auditing.
reviewing? Yes,
No, not funding. I know funding is already done. But
yes,
auditing, this will be the last year for that?
yes.
So that's going to release 800 hours? Is that what you're saying? You have 400 and 400.
Oh, but they weren't, those hours weren't used last year.
Oh, they weren't? Oh, okay.
Yes. Any questions, concerns?
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez, for that presentation. One question on the campuses that needed continued monitoring. You said the continued monitoring is because of errors? What kind of?
When we went in and did the follow-up, so when we perform our follow-up review, we look at what errors there were during the actual audit, and we come in and just look at those specific areas on a much smaller sample. If we see continued, some similar errors, then we will include it we consider it continued monitoring. So we'll come in again in a couple months to do a subsequent follow-up. A lot of times it's because perhaps it's a new clerk that is still getting up to speed, so we'll continue to work with them.
I'm sorry, what's an example of an error exactly?
The areas that we'll look at in the campus audit primarily are going to be fundraising, cash handling, and a lot of attendance. Sometimes the errors will be absence. The absences are coded incorrectly, or fundraisers don't have adequate documentation.
Okay, thank you. So other than that, there's no areas of concern that you found is what it looks like?
What do you mean?
Just in general, there's nothing alarming that we need to be aware about, just in a simple statement, if that's would be your assessment.
Not right now. So from the campus audits, at least that we've looked at this year, we do rate the errors in 4 different categories of risk: low, medium, high, and priority. Mm-hmm. All of the errors were in the lower range.
Oh, okay.
They were either green or yellow, so nothing extreme, nothing significant.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to say something. I just want to say how much I appreciate your reports. They're easier to understand than we've been accustomed to in the past, and I just appreciate your hard work in this area. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for all of your support.
I did notice that you have the corrective action plans have been implemented a little faster, and the follow-ups have come a little bit sooner, which I think helps the whole district understand that these audits are going to come, but they need to correct them within the time period that's allotted, and that there will be follow-ups, especially if it's just sampling.
Yes.
And I do appreciate the report. I think it's very clear as to where you are, where you were, where you're at, and where you will be. So it helps a lot in understanding what is happening in our district. So thank you for, and again, the report is very, very well presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I think we need to take a 10-minute break, or a 5-minute break, I'm sorry, not 10 minutes, 5-minute break. So at 7:50, we'll resume at 7:55. Okay, we will now discuss the agenda items as listed in the posted notice of the regular meeting of the Ysleta ISD Board of Trustees for February 13, 2024, and related recommended motions with the superintendent and executive cabinet, and receive responses to questions and/or answers requests for additional information through the superintendent in preparation for deliberation and action on said items at the February 13, 2024 regular Board of Trustees meeting. Please stop me if you have any questions or wish to pull an item for separate consideration. Consent items, consider approval of the minutes for the Board of Trustees workshop and regular board meeting January 17, 2024, 6 p.m. Number 2 is the Board of Trustees Superintendent Evaluation Meeting, January 31st, 2024, 6 p.m. Number 3 is the monthly financials update for December 2023. Policy items. Policy DC, employment practices, employment of retirees.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, can somebody kind of explain what, because it says here, the section recommended for deletion has language contrary to the district's practice. Can we kind of talk about that and explain what that means?
Good evening, board members, Board President Ochoa, Trustee Woodruff. So we're looking specifically at your current DC local policy, and that's in your board book on page, it says packet page 167, and there's a section that's entitled Employment of Retirees. So back before 2021 legislation, districts, what they would do, because TRS charges, it's a surcharge, right? If you're going to rehire a retiree, you're going to have to pay for that retiree. And so, and Ms. Russell Garcia can speak a little bit more about that. What used to happen before the 2021 legislation is that the districts got somewhat creative. How can we offset these costs to the district? By either directly or indirectly deducting that surcharge from the retirees' payment, from their salary somehow. The 2021 legislature came together and said, that's a problem. We don't want it to cost the retirees. We want the obligation to pay these surcharges to remain with the employer. So whoever is helping to pay into that teacher retirement pension, they need to remain obligated and responsible, and they cannot indirectly pass that cost off to the employee. Retired or not, but specifically to the retirees. So in 2021, through Senate Bill 202, they now specifically require, it says a reporting employer is ultimately responsible for the payment of the amounts required to be contributed. The employer may not directly or indirectly pass that cost on to the retiree through payroll deduction, by imposition of a fee, or by any other means designed to recover the cost. And so in looking at DC local and in consulting with TASB and also with Ms. Russell Garcia, we determined that as a district, we haven't had this practice that's in policy since the 2021 legislation came into effect. So I wanted to make sure to clean up this policy. I don't want to give any indication to the contrary, and certainly in violation of any legal obligations that we have. And so that's why it's coming before you, because we need to make sure that when we rehire or employ retirees, we're not passing off those costs to the retiree or to the employees. We're ultimately responsible for paying those costs.
So I see that this is a state legislative thing that's happened then.
Yes, ma'am.
So have we been following this rule since 21?
We have. And so I checked with Ms. Russell Garcia to make sure that in practice we were not violating this law. And so I'm happy to report that we have basically made sure that our practice aligns with that 2021 legislation, effective, I think it was September 1st, 2021.
Okay.
So we're good, but we need to make sure that our policy reflects current law.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Russell, and since 2021, have we had to rehire somebody like this to pay that surcharge?
We do have a couple of retirees, but we don't charge them the surcharge. It would
No,
be
not
a
that, but we do. The
Yes,
district
we
pays
would-
for it.
We would pay for it, yes, sir.
And these are probably specialty teachers that you need in the classroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I had questions on that too. I was not too clear about that. Okay, we go to action item number 1, 2024 Internal Audit Action Plan as presented tonight. And then we're also going to go into closed session for the discussion of district-wide intruder detection audit report findings. Then in closed session for level 3 grievance hearing, where there's number 1 is level 3 hearing under policy GF local for Sun Travel Inc. in connection with solicitation number 224004 RFP travel services. And then number 2 is consultation with legal counsel regarding level 3 appeal by Sun Travel Inc. in connection with solicitation number 224004 RFP travel services. Okay, the order of the agenda has been approved. May I have an electronic motion on the consent items listed on the agenda as recommended by administration? Ms. Woodruff.
Mr. President, I move that the consent agenda items be, I'm sorry, let me start over. I move to approve the consent agenda items listed on this agenda as recommended by the administration.
I have a second by Mr. Haggerty. Please cast your electronic votes. All votes have been cast. The results are 6 in favor, none opposed. Okay, let's see. Now we're going to go to policy item number 1. Policy DC local employment practices, employment of retirees. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. May I have an electronic motion? Ms. Woodruff?
Mr. President, I move to approve revisions to policy DC local as recommended by TASB.
We have a second by Ms. Lucero. Please cast your electronic votes. Results are in. 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Action item number 1. In 2024 Internal Audit Annual Action Plan. Is there any discussion? If no further discussion, may I have an electronic motion? Mr. Haggerty.
Move to approve the 2024 Internal Audit Plan as presented by the Internal Auditor.
Thank you. We have a second by Mr. Hernandez. Please cast your electronic votes. All votes have been cast. Results are 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. At this time, we're going to go to closed session, discussion of district-wide intruder detection audit report findings. The Board of Trustees has determined that a closed meeting of the Board of Trustees is required to discuss the items set forth in the posted agenda for this date. Such closed meeting is authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.001, including but not limited to the sections and purposes covered by the following sections of the Texas Government Code: 551.071, 72, 73, 74, 76, 82, 127, 821, 83, 84, 87, and 89. Should any final action, decision, or vote be required with regard to any matter considered in closed session, the final action, decision, or vote shall be in the open meeting or at a subsequent public meeting with notice. The board will now go into closed session in the Rio Grande room at 8:10 p.m.
It's just sharp, man. You're always just sharp.
We reconvene this meeting with Shane Haggerty, Chris Hernandez, Mike Dwyer, Connie Woodruff, and myself. Did I miss somebody? Catherine Lucero. At 8:32 p.m. Number one, consider approval of district-wide intruder detection audit report findings. Is there an electronic motion? Oh, they're not here. Okay, replay. We reconvene this meeting with Shane Haggerty, Chris Hernandez, Catherine Lucero, Connie Woodruff, Mike Dwyer, and myself, Cruz Ochoa, at 8:35 p.m. One, to consider approval of district-wide intruder detection audit findings. Is there an electronic motion? Mr. Hernandez.
I move to accept the report as discussed in closed session.
We have a second by Ms. Woodruff. Please cast your electronic votes. All votes have been cast. Results are 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. At this time, we ask that if you are not part of the Level 3 hearing for Sun Travel Inc., you exit the room. We will hold the closed Level 3 hearing, grievance hearing here in the Ysleta room. I will allow you a few minutes to gather your things so we may begin.